Welcome to the Dreams Are Real podcast, where we aim to ignite the fire that allows you to unleash your greatest potential. I'm your host, Dan McPherson, and I'm on a mission to help you own your story on the way to building your ideal life. The first step toward achieving your dreams is to overcome the momentum of zero. Take a step and let that motion dispel the emotions of fear, worry, or self-doubt. No matter where you are in your life or career, only you can make that choice. The good news, you've got this. Why? Because dreams are real. Let's dive in. Welcome to the Dreams Are Real podcast. I'm your host, Dan McPherson, and I'm happy to have you with us for another interview. Today, in the hot seat, probably not so hot, actually, just the fun seat, we have Tress Hotzel, who is not only one of my favorite new connections over the last few months, but one of the most energetic, positive people I know. Don't let that fool you, though. She has a powerful, connecting story and does incredible things in the world at a very deep level. She is the founder and a decision coach at Deeper Decisions, LLC. She is working hard to change people's lives, and I believe, as she'll probably tell us, starting with her own. Glad to have you with us, Tress.
Dan, this is phenomenal. Thank you so much for having me.
You are totally welcome. I'm very glad to have you here, and I'm looking forward to hearing parts of your story that I don't know. I've been able to hear pieces, and I'm looking forward to hearing more. As we begin, I started by calling you a decision coach, which is the title that you've used with me. How do you respond when other people ask what you do?
So that is sort of an odd question for me to try and answer, because the answer is I sort of do whatever it is that you need me to do to help you make decisions. My overall job is that I help people make major life transition decisions with clarity and confidence, which is a mouthful and some really hard work.
So that's definitely sounds like some hard work. I know I'm going to dig way into that later, but I have to ask even now, how does one end up being a decision coach as opposed to a life coach or a business coach or a personal development coach? I don't know that, in fact, that I've ever heard the title decision coach before I met you.
Well, you probably haven't, because I made it up.
All right.
So I am a certified life coach. And as I was going through my certification, one of the requirements for my classes was that I had to be working actively with people. That was part of being able to be certified, was the ability to work with people as a life coach. And the more I worked with people, the more I realized that it was major life transition decisions that were coming to me. So it was more of an awareness of a pattern than a specific decision that I made, that I was going to go out and help people make decisions. My original thought was that I was going to be working with people in career transition. And so I was actually leaning towards career coach, but that didn't feel right to me, because when I think career coach, I think suit and tie and climbing the corporate ladder. And the last time I worked in an environment like that was something like 15 years ago. And I made it about 6 months before I chucked the whole thing and went out on my own. And so I thought, maybe that's not the world for me.
Not the right path, right? That's pretty fun. So as you moved forward into that world, it became obvious that helping people make decisions was what you were doing, even if that might not have been your original aim.
Exactly that. So I had people that were coming to me with all sorts of different decisions. So do I leave my 9-to-5 and become an entrepreneur? Do I take a leap of faith and move to a new state? I just got done with college. I have no idea what to do next. These really transition moments in life, these pivotal moments that feel very big, and we're often so wrapped up in what's right in front of us that we have a really hard time unpicking the bigger picture, which makes it really challenging to make a decision that feels right. We spend a lot of time second guessing ourselves, or feeling frustrated, or going back and forth and not really moving forward. So through that whole process, I kind of decided that I was a decision coach since I was helping people unpick all of these things for themselves.
Well, I guess it's good that you made the decision. If you're going to help others do that, that's a good start, right?
Exactly. Exactly. It
I,
starts with me.
it's really cool how it became obvious to you. That's a lot of how things developed for me as well. The manner in which I help creatives and women entrepreneurs as the largest part of my audience or my clientele came about in much the same way. So I relate to that, and it's exciting to me that you were observant enough to see it, to see the pattern, and then positive moving forward enough to reach out, grab it, and take that and say, I don't care that the title doesn't exist. I'll make a title.
It was, it felt very right for me. I don't tend to like to fit myself into other people's boxes, particularly around work, which is why the world of entrepreneurship has always been something that I've been drawn to. So this idea of creating a title and a job description and figuring out what that means, and okay, now what's my process and how do I actually help people do this thing and explain it in a way that people might understand, all of that is very fun for me. That's really what gets me going. Waking up and saying, I'm a life coach is a great thing. It's a very necessary thing when you're good at it. But my entry point is decision making specifically. And that's not to say that we don't talk about a lot of different things within
Right.
your life, because they're all interwoven. But decision making is definitely my entry point and sort of my fun playground. I really enjoy inhabiting that space.
That does sound fun. And if I know anything about you, it's that you're going to have fun in what you do. And you are, I think you said a moment ago that you are going to be living and bouncing around in and outside and around the boxes. Has that always been true? Like when you think about your origins, you think back to the beginnings of the magic of Tresss, where do you come from? And was that outside the box? Was that wandering around and playing wildly as well?
So it depends on how far back you want to go. But yeah, I've sort of always done my own thing. So good example. When I was a kid, I used to sit inside my toy box and play because it was the only clean place in my room. And so that was, all of my stuff was everywhere. And so I would take whatever I wanted to play with and sit inside the box.
So it was everywhere except the one place it belonged.
Exactly, which is sort of how I live my life. So there's that, that was kind of my beginnings, I suppose. I bounced around. I did a lot of different jobs. I worked for a martial arts school for a while. I was a butcher at Whole Foods for a long time. I worked overnights at Starbucks. Not my favorite job, but it's what allowed me to go to Ireland. So, there we go. But the idea of working for other people has always been sort of a struggle for me. I did really well in school because I'm really good at absorbing information and then regurgitating it, but I don't hold on to it unless it matters to me. So I did really well in school, but I knew that being sort of on that path wasn't necessarily for me long term. So being in the corporate world, like I take your information, I give it back to you, not really a place for me. I come from a long line of entrepreneurs. My grandmother was a school teacher. She ran her own schoolhouse. My dad was an entrepreneur. My stepmom has been an entrepreneur for longer than I've been alive. Both my sisters, either now or at some point in the past, have worked for themselves. My brother is a freelance journalist. My mom is an artist. Like I come by this very honestly. So I worked for a cleaning company for a while and I kind of hated it, but I went out on my own and that part I really loved. And as I was making the transition into life coaching, I started thinking about the things that I loved about cleaning. I loved the connections that I had with my clients. I loved that I was genuinely making a difference in their lives. I got the ability to go in and spend a couple of hours, and that was time that they got back in their own lives to spend on the things that mattered to them. And that was what kept me going every day. It wasn't the fact that I was going and mopping floors and dusting. That didn't fulfill me, but what I got out of that was what was fulfilling. And so I used that as my basis to figure out what to do next. It took me a long time to answer that question. And it was part of how I came to life coaching, was I wanted to save people some time on answering the question, what's next in my life? So that was part of it for me. And I've always been sort of let's try it and see what happens. And I learned that from my stepdad, who was very good at allowing me to constructively break things and figure out how they were made.
I was
and
like, what does that mean?
Back together. So one of my favorite memories is he actually brought home a radio. I was probably 10, and so it was like a big, like boombox style radio, right? And we took the whole thing apart, and we were like looking at all of the stuff inside and tinkering
That sounds
with
like
it.
fun.
And we were like, this is how you break it down to its base parts, and like, how does it work? And then when you put it all back together, if you do it right, it still works, or it works again if it was broken. And
so it's the putting it back together part. Oh, I skipped that step.
Yeah. Yeah. So, but we spent a lot of time doing that. So computers and radios and stuff like that. And so there was a lot of, even from a very young age, of this looking deeper into things and, finding out how it works. And, just because you push the button and it doesn't work doesn't mean you throw it away. If you push the button and it doesn't work, let's figure out why. And so that really started translating as I got older into, I know that, push the button, get the pellet, push the button, get the pellet. That sort of life isn't for me. Like, I'm not somebody who's just going to go sit in a cubicle in front of a computer. I've done that too. I lasted 18 months. It turns out it's not for me. So it was more of okay, how do I remove that from my life and make it something bigger, make it more meaningful? And for me, it's always been, always my whole life, it's been about other people. It's been about learning and teaching. When I was a kid, my dream was to be a teacher. And so this idea of teaching people and adding to their lives and bringing value to their lives has always very much been a part of who I am. But I want to do it my own way. I don't want to do it like in a school.
How early do you remember wanting to be a teacher?
Oh, elementary school, easily.
Right.
I was 6 when my brother was born. I was probably 8 when I started trying to teach him things.
Nice. So it was very deeply embedded.
I was very young. And part of that was due to my mom's brilliance. When I would get home from school, she didn't ask me, what happened today or what was good about the day. She would ask me to teach her something. Teach me something that you learned today.
Wow.
And so that became sort of this ingrained habit. And even younger than that, my dad was very encouraging when it came to making up stories. So tell me stories. And that was how he worked through a lot of, I still vividly remember having fears about going to kindergarten. I didn't want to go. It was a big change. It was going to be big and scary. And so my dad would ask me to tell stories. And so we would walk down to the lake that I lived on, because I lived like lake access. So we would walk down to the lake, and I would tell him stories about Eric the fish. And fish are in schools, right? And so like all of this made sense to me at 5 years old.
I love it.
Eric the fish is part of the school.
Eric the fish goes to school.
Things. He was scared about all of these things. So he was scared about the bullies. He was scared that people wouldn't like him. He was scared that it was a big school and he wouldn't know anybody. Like, he was scared about all of these things. And this was my way to tell my dad that I was scared about these things without it being about me.
So have you released this as a kid's book series yet?
It was in process, but my dad passed away. So he vividly remembered the stories. But I believe that there are still some outlines and stuff that my stepmom's got. He's got the artwork and everything all done.
That's powerful.
Yeah. So eventually they will probably be released. I cried the day that he told me that he was going to release those. I thought it was so cool that he had remembered the stories well enough to write them down. And, here we are, whatever it was, 25 years later, he had remembered them well enough to write them all down and turn them into a book.
And you remember them well enough to be an indelible part of your story. That's incredible.
Definitely. So, yeah.
Do you use stories as part of your path now? The same thing?
So my response to that is that I am made of words. I am fairly certain that I am a giant ball of words in a meat suit.
A giant
And
ball of words in a meat suit. I feel like that should be on a shirt somewhere.
it's, well, it's sort of true. And the more and more tattoos I get, the more and more covered in words they seem to be.
Nice.
Um, so yeah, I think that stories are very important in a lot of ways. I think that allows us to connect and relate to each other in ways that make sense for us. So if you logically explain something, that's one form of understanding. But if you explain it anecdotally, it triggers your emotional brain. And so you have a much easier time sort of putting yourself in that position. It fosters a lot more understanding. It fosters a lot more compassion. It fosters a lot more realizations within ourselves. So if I tell you a story that, without going into detail, but I tell you a story about a client, then you can sort of put yourself in those shoes and think, oh, I'm in a similar situation, or, oh my gosh, my best friend is in this situation. This is perfect. Or, oh yeah, I was totally there. I can't tell you how many times I've talked with people and told them about, it's taken me 4 years to answer the question, what's next? This is how I got to what I'm doing now. And I have people say, where were you 10 years ago? Where were you 15 years ago? I was there. I totally get that feeling. I needed you, as I was going through that transition or that tough decision.
So stories give you the power to transform others, just like the power of stories helped you get to where you needed to be.
Exactly.
I guess you're helping others go to school in a sense. That's
Just a different form of teacher.
that's right. And so as you think back to that dream of being a teacher, does that it sounds like it's shaped and changed a little bit over the years, but the dream is still much the same.
Sort of, yeah. It's one of those. I think that what happens is we get very wrapped up in the end goal sometimes. So I went to school. One of my degrees is in early elementary education. That's part of my background is being a teacher. I taught martial arts. I was in that academic world. I did the lesson planning. And if I had held very tightly onto that dream, I think right now I would be really miserable. And that there was a lot about the formal education of teaching within the school system that isn't for me. It's not part of my core values. It really doesn't align with who I am. But because I was able to release that very narrow idea and embrace the idea of teaching in general, what I've allowed myself to do is open that up to the wider world. And so I have a process that I take my clients through when it comes to decision making. And I've been able to use that in some of the speeches that I've done and present that information in sort of a shortened version, but people still get value from that. It helps them think in a different way. And because I've been able to do that, now I've got an event in a couple of weeks where I'm one of the 2 presenters for a Chamber of Commerce, event. And that's something totally different. But what I'm going to be doing is teaching some of the things that I have learned along the way and helping people come to their own conclusions and decisions around a particular topic. And that feels very exciting. So I let go of the very narrow idea of teaching so that I could hold on to the bigger dream of teaching.
That's great. And you're going to be out there sharing those stories. I've seen you on stage sharing, and it was powerful and connected and engaging. I'm sure that you will be again. When you're on stage sharing in that broader teaching sense, how does that feel now that as a revision of that earlier dream? How does it feel when you're actually out there?
I love public speaking. I absolutely revel in it. And I came to that in a really strange way, but I love, love, love being out there and sharing things with people. And I still get nervous, just like anybody else does before they take the stage. And the last thought that I choose to think before I walk up on stage every single time without fail is, there is at least one person here who needs to hear what I have to say. And so my goal every time I step on stage is to connect with that one person, whoever they may be. And I might not know who they are. I don't know who needs to hear whatever it is that I have to say, but somebody in the audience needs to hear it. And without fail, every time I've given a presentation, at least one person has come up to me and said verbatim, I needed to hear what you had to say today. And so that sort of that positive loop just keeps me going. I'm like, yep, this is something that I need to remember and pay attention to. And there could be 50 people in the audience and 49 of them might think that I'm full of hooey, but one person needs to hear what I have to say. And if that person gets that message and that was what they needed so that they can do something in their lives that's helpful or better or allows them to move in a positive direction, then I have done my job, and I'm fulfilling my own personal passions and needs and what I believe that I am here for on this earth.
One person is the win, right? One life impact changes the world.
That's one at a time. My biggest goal in life, my true dream, is to live in a happier world than we inhabit. And that is a dream that I have every day, because I believe that we can always have more happiness. We can always have more joy. We can always have more contentment. And so even if the whole world is happier today than it was yesterday, we can still be happier tomorrow. And for me, that starts just one person at a time. If I reach out and I reach one person and something that I say or do or encourage or help them discover or uncover about themselves gets them to that place where they think, I am happier, I have more joy, I'm more content with what it is that I'm doing, I'm living a life that I really want to be living, I have discovered that dreams are real and that I can go forward and live into this, then there's a ripple effect there, and that impacts the people around them. And so I, in turn, have impacted more than one person, even if I've only talked with one person.
I can tell you from being in the audience, you're impacting a lot more than 1 out of 50. It's pretty powerful in the room, and I'm excited to have had the opportunity to be there. I look forward to more in the future with that. As you've done what you've done, it sounds like throughout your life you've had to be more than a little bit brave, whether it be stepping out into a decision coach or to be a decision coach rather, or making other decisions to break away from things. Is courage, bravery, would you claim that as a key piece of your story? And if so, what's an example you might share that matters to you?
So when I was doing martial arts regularly, one of the things that one of my instructors used to say repeatedly was that being brave was feeling the fear and doing it anyway. And so there has been a lot of times in my life where I sit with that feeling that you can feel the butterflies in your stomach and you're like, oh man, this feels like a bad idea. And there's an excellent book called Mastering Fear by Brandon Webb. And there are some really beautiful and actionable steps in there on the idea of feeling that fear and being able to boldly move forward through that. And I would say that there are a lot of things in life that I feel fearful about. It was really hard for me to leave a stable, I was working a 9 to 5 when I went out on my own in cleaning. And so that was hard. And then leaving, I had built a very successful cleaning business. And I was essentially cutting myself off at the knees. I really took the mindset of I have to burn my own ships. And that I gave myself an end date. I said December 31st, 2018 is the last day that I'm cleaning. I didn't have a full roster of coaching clients. I didn't have a website. I didn't have business cards. I didn't have a business. I wasn't actually certified for my life coaching until like January 17th. But December 31st, it was a Monday, 2018 was my last day cleaning. It was like, if I don't give myself that hard stop, I'm never going to stop doing this. I'm always going to try and straddle two lines. And so this idea of kind of knowing when to boldly push yourself forward because it's something that matters so much to you is really important to me. And that has helped me get through a lot of the fears. And believe me, there have been plenty of fears, even in starting a coaching business. You know, who am I to be listened to? You know, who says I'm the expert? I made up my title, for God's sakes. I don't have a PhD in this. I don't have an academic background in decision making. I am an observer of people. I go on gut feelings and intuition as much as I go on processes that I've learned and decision-making books that I've read and why these are good things and how to make decisions better. It's sort of this magical blend of things that I know and things that I've gleaned and things that I believe are true that I have no idea where they really come from. And that creates a lot of fear when there's a lot of unknowns. And so that's hard. That's a hard place to sit. And I've realized that when you have the right people in your corner, that fear becomes a lot easier. And so I've had 4 coaches in the last year for various things. I have a business mentor. I have wonderful support in, the people that are nearest and dearest to me. And truly without them, I wouldn't be where I am today. And they, in their ways, they all make the fear a little bit easier. And I think that that's how we all tend to live if we are well connected and we've got that community around us, is that it's okay for us to be afraid. It's okay for us to feel like we're sort of falling apart, because you have plenty of people in your life to either hold you up or hold you together, or say, here, I'm gonna hold this part for you for a little while. And when you're done freaking out, I'll give it back. But for now, I'm just gonna hold on to this part of the fear. You don't get to worry about this right now. Okay, you hold on to that part of fear. I'll take it back when I'm ready to, or when I can handle it. That's been a big part of it for me, is people.
It sounds like courage in so many different ways, and I suspect that's a pattern on a longer path for you, is that willingness to step forward and be brave, even though you're afraid. You mentioned martial arts is where you heard that lesson over and over. I've heard the same. What martial arts do you study?
I don't anymore. I studied a martial art called Toshindo, which is a sister art to Aikido and Hapkido.
Okay.
It's essentially modernized ninjutsu.
Great. I know that question was going to come up, so I had to at least get that little bit in there. As you have started a business, or I guess really a couple of them, has it been different than you thought it might have been?
Oh, wow. Yes. Very much so. And very different businesses. So, starting a coaching business is a little bit more ethereal. When you walk into somebody's house and you say, I'm a house cleaner, and they say, my house is dirty, you say, I can help you fix that. And then they give you money and you fix it. And when you walk up to somebody and you say, I help clean up brains, and they say, my brain is dirty, I don't want you to look at it, it's a much different sell.
My brain is dirty, I don't want you to look at it. That is it's a great quote.
It's sort of what happens though. We all have these dark spaces, we all have these caverns that we don't want to look in our brains, we all have these monsters in our minds that we try not to think about. And if somebody walks up and says, this is what I do, our first instinct for a lot of us is to shut down and think, oh no, those are scary things, I don't want to have to go slay that dragon today, please stop talking to me. So,
and your answer is, no, we're going to keep talking. Because I am made of words covered in a meat suit.
Precisely. Well, it is scary. That's actually directly on my website. That's one of the first things that I say about coaching, is that it's hard. It's really hard work, and it's really scary. And it's unpredictably hard, because you're not entirely sure what it is that you're going to uncover as you start talking and thinking and exploring these things. And that's a big part of why I've gone through coaching, why I have coaches currently, why I've had coaches throughout this whole process, is because I want to make sure that I get that feeling. I understand that feeling, and boy, do I. And one of the biggest things that I keep saying, and that I keep reminding myself, and that I remind my clients, is that this idea of self-discovery or of self-improvement is one of the most heartbreaking and soul satisfying things that you can do. And it's hard, but the thing is that if there's somebody who's willing to be courageously vulnerable with you, then you have the ability to be courageously vulnerable with yourself. And so I do tell stories about myself, and I do share things about myself that people are like, wow, you're going to share that? Yeah, I am, because here's the thing. It's part of who I am. It's part of my past. And if you are going to allow me the honor of sitting with you in something that's so difficult, I have nothing but respect for that. And so it's very important that you realize that I'm in this with you. I'm here to walk beside you. And it does take a lot of courage for somebody to explore life coaching in general, or explore self-development in general. It takes a lot of courage because you have to be willing to be vulnerable with yourself. And that's almost harder than being vulnerable with anybody else.
Would you say that one of your biggest challenges as a coach is helping someone get to that spot where they are, I don't know if comfortable is the right word, but maybe willing to be vulnerable?
Yes and no. Honestly, if people aren't willing to be vulnerable, they don't typically seek out coaching in general. It's one of those things that I've talked with people where we're just not a good fit. And so, my job is to recognize that and to wish them well. And maybe give them a referral for somebody who might be a better fit. And then with the clients that do come to me and end up working with me, my job is to really sit with them and be with them and allow that vulnerability to happen, and to really, I think that there's a lot of talk about holding space, and it seems like this sort of airy-fairy out there in the world, like, I don't know what that means kind of a thing. But if you visualize it, what it means for me is sort of this idea of sitting around the campfire at 2:00 in the morning when it's just you and the other person and you can talk about anything in the world, or curling up on the couch under your favorite blanket with a mug of tea and just having that cozy, comfortable, you know that you're safe. It's okay to say whatever it is that you need to say. It's okay to cry. It's okay to be mad or to want to hit a pillow, or, to really feel whatever those emotions are. That's sort of the space that we talk about. It's not such a physical thing. We're not typically sitting on the couch or around a campfire, but it's sort of creating that same sort of feeling in the trust that we share, my client and I, or the connection that we share. And with me being willing to be vulnerable and being able to share my stories, that allows the other person to feel okay with doing the same.
It's a very powerful connection, and I see another book in the works, Campfire Stories with Tress. Just another image, maybe a way to help people prepare themselves for coaching. That's you have like 7 series of books that can come out of just this conversation. I'm pretty sure you need a full-time publisher and you'll be all set. As you think about this journey where you've learned so many different things, it sounds like, about yourself, about others, about connection, what would you claim is maybe the biggest lesson that you've learned along the way?
I would say that the biggest lesson is the simplest and the hardest, and that is know thyself. And there's a lot in those 2 words. It's actually, its origins are ancient Greece, which is why I have it tattooed on myself in modern Greek, because nobody speaks ancient Greek anymore.
Oddly, I do. I don't speak it, but I read it.
Well, there you go. See, I should have known you before I got it tattooed.
That's right. No, that's awesome that you have that on you. And in Greek, that's got to look so beautiful, right?
Yeah. So this idea, though, and it's this peeling back of the layers and this getting deeper and getting deeper. I think we start with the things that we like and the things that we don't, and that's a good first place to start. And then from there, sort of stripping away some of the ideas or projections or even demands that other people place or attempt to place on us. That's sort of the next level, is kind of being able to strip some of that away. And as we get deeper and deeper, we start talking about our core values and the things that are truly most important to us in life, and the things that matter more than anything else. And at the deepest level, or one of the deepest levels, is what is it that we want out of this world truly, and what is it that we want to bring to this world? And as you go deeper and deeper and you learn more about yourself, you realize that you don't ever fully know yourself. I don't know that we ever get to the point that we truly know ourselves. Maybe we do, but in the time that I've spent here, I certainly don't feel like I know all of me yet. There's definitely a lot that I'm still learning even today. But I think that is the most important lesson, because it is ever changing and ever evolving. And if you continue to do the work, and you continue to grow, and you continue to attempt to be the best version of yourself that you possibly can. And I think that's a huge, it's just huge. It's huge for me. That's the most important thing. It's just a little bit better every day.
It's a great lesson, and a powerful one that resonates through the generations. It's frequently said that the hardest person to lead is yourself, and the most important person to lead is yourself. I would also say that if you're going to lead others, or you're going to shape the world, you do that by addressing yourself first. So a lot of value in that. That's a great lesson to grab onto as we think about new entrepreneurs, and we think about people who are maybe considering jumping off the cliff. What is something that you wish you'd known when you started that they should know?
It's harder than you think, y'all.
So if they're thinking it's hard, it's harder, right?
Definitely. It's harder, and it takes more time than you think it's gonna. And I knew that going into coaching was going to be hard. I knew that building this business was going to take a long time. And I have learned this year that cultivating patience takes a whole lot of patience. And yeah, it's a lot harder than you think it's going to be. And it's totally worth it if it's really what you want to do, if it genuinely speaks to that core of who you are, if it really lines up with what it is that you want to bring to this world, if it lines up with your why. If you're familiar with Simon Sinek, and you start with why, and it lines up with that, if it lines up with your North Star, if you've gone through the UNS program and you figured some of that out, and you answered those questions, and it lines up with it, then it's worth it. And it's okay that it's hard. It's good that it's hard. One of my all-time favorite quotes comes from my little brother. And the quote is, "If it were easy, you would be disappointed." And I just keep reminding myself of that all the time. Like, yes, this is hard because it matters to me. This is hard because I'm learning a lot of new things. This is hard because it's something that I've never done before. I fell off my bike a lot when I first learned how to ride. Keep going. This matters to me. This is important to me. And it's hard.
If it were easy, you'd be disappointed. I love that quote. That speaks to me a lot. And
Yep.
it is this idea that it's harder than we think it's going to be is important. I love how you pair it with, but if you are doing what resonates in the fiber of your soul, it is so worth it. It's another good encouragement to make sure you know why you're going, where you're going before you go. Because if it's harder than you think it's going to be, and you already thought it was going to be hard, that's going to be discouraging if it wasn't the thing that you really wanted to be doing in life.
Exactly.
Say to the same audience, what would you say is the most important characteristic of an entrepreneur?
Um, I was thinking about this earlier, and I think that I could go with some of the standard answers, this idea of tenacity or being willing to hustle or, being able to work the odd hours. I think all of those things are important if that's who you are. If you are somebody who loves to work 16 hours a day because you're going to work 8 or 10 hours and then you're going to put in 6 or 8 on your side hustle to build your business, if that's who you are, great. But I think for me, truly, again, it comes back to knowing yourself. And this idea that, I know that I am not going to work 16 hours a day. There are other things that are in my life that are too important to me. And so I knew that I had to give up one job in order to build a new company. So I think that the most important characteristic is an ability to check in with yourself, to see where you are and is this where you want to be going? Is this what you want to be doing? And, having that awareness or having a team around you that can help you foster that awareness is vital.
So in other words, know thyself. I feel like that's
words,
that's right.
Know thyself. It's a big thing. It turns out it's a really important thing.
It certainly is. That is great. As you have built your world, are there any particular resources that have made it easier to chase your dreams? Any specific books? You've mentioned a couple, and we'll link to these in the show notes. Any specific books or strategies or resources that would be helpful to others?
So I would say that the most important resource in my life is people, definitely, without fail. Above and beyond that, yes, there are definitely several books that I particularly love. I mentioned Mastering Fear by Brandon Webb. For people that feel stuck or unsure or would like a new perspective, one of the books that I recommend to pretty much everybody ever is called Designing Your Life by Bill Burnett and Dave Evans. They are out of the Stanford D School. That's part of how I ended up in coaching, was going through and doing a lot of the work in their book. I'm a big fan of Brene Brown. I think that basically everything she's done is fabulous.
She's incredible.
I might be a little bit biased. Yeah. So I highly recommend checking out a lot of her stuff. I really enjoyed the book Grit by Angela Duckworth.
Yes.
I think that is a really in-depth look at what does it really take to get you on your path and keep moving forward when things are really hard. I mentioned Simon Sinek and Start With Why. That was definitely an important one for me. So those were some of the ones. I read so many books last year. It was unbelievable. Those were some of the ones sort of off the top of my head that stick with me. But truly, I think that the biggest, most important resource in my life has been people. So it's been my nearest and dearest, and making sure that the people that I keep closest to me are people that are going to support me and push me forward. I think that a lot of people have heard this idea that you are the 5 people you spend the most time with. And so make sure that those are good, supportive, positive, encouraging people that are going to push you forward and lift you up and are not standing there trying to hold you back or hold you down or inject negativity into your life. I think that makes a huge difference. And then above and beyond that, it's going out and it's been putting myself out into the world and connecting with people in a really authentic way. I spent a lot of my life trying to be somebody else, and it didn't work out very well for me because it turns out I'm not somebody else than me. And so once I realized that and I really started embracing that, I have put myself out into the world as myself, and some really phenomenal people have come into my life directly as a result of that. You, Dan, being one of them. So, it's one of those, the more you know yourself, the more good things come into your life, the more the things that speak to you, matter to you, line up with you, come into your life. And that's been the biggest thing for me. That's been the biggest resource for me. It's been the people in my life.
People and surrounding yourself with a team. I agree passionately as a core principle of my life that you surround you, the people, you become the people that you surround yourself with. So that resonates deeply for me. As we begin to wrap up this first section of our conversation, and you think about dreams, what does it mean to you that dreams are real? You mentioned earlier that you believe they are, and that's something that's important in your life. What does it mean to you that when you say that they are?
So yeah, I touched on that earlier when we were talking about teaching, and I think a lot of us get really wrapped up in the idea of a very specific goal, something that we see. I want to be a teacher, and what that means I'm going to work in a school, and I'm going to teach kids, and I'm going to wear weird looking skirts and shoes that match. I'm totally talking about my 6th grade teacher right now. So, like we have this image in our mind of what that dream looks like. And I think that if we can release that small idea for the bigger dream, this, again, lining up with who we are, what it is that really matters to us, planting that North Star and then chasing that and saying, my dream is to serve the world. My dream is to impact 1 million entrepreneurs. My dream is to whatever it is, whatever this bigger dream is, it feels less tangible. And I think that that's really hard for a lot of us to sit with it first. But as we start working towards it, we start seeing this momentum, we start seeing these changes and realizing, oh, this felt big and scary and intangible and very ethereal. And it turns out that's real. This is something that I'm actively pursuing. It's something that I'm doing every day. And it was just my own personal stories. It was my fears. It was my limiting beliefs that were making it feel intangible. And so when you think about this idea that dreams are real, it's letting go of a lot of the fears that we're holding on to chase something bigger than what we think is possible.
I love just that last part of your description, letting go of the things we were holding on to. That is a lot of what dreams are about. So when people use you as an example, you've made all these changes, you've run businesses, you've jumped off the cliff, so to speak. And so when people, myself included, look at you and say that you are an example that dreams are real, how does that make you feel?
It's a really emboldening feeling. And it's very exciting because I still don't feel like I know what I'm doing. I don't, but the visual that I have in my mind, and it's something that's really played out in a lot of different ways, is that I feel like I'm standing with one hand stretched out in front of me and one hand stretched behind me, right? So there are people that are ahead of me that are encouraging me and bringing me forward and holding out their hands so that I can grab on and help pull myself forward. And at the same time, I get to look back towards people who are still in that place of feeling that fear, not sure if their dreams really are real, or they see it, but it's too scary, or if it still feels intangible. And I get the chance to reach back and reach my hand out for them and say, come on, we can do this. I don't know what I'm doing either, but that's okay. Like, I'm moving forward and you can too. Let's all do it together. And it's really exciting.
It is exciting. It's a concept that I refer to as magnetism and momentum. And it's something that I've seen for a lot of clients as they move through the stages of their development and the magnetism changes. It's pretty exciting on that part of the journey, and also can be pretty humbling to recognize. As we move forward here, we move into our rapid response questions, our Fortunate 5, where we talk about things that we've been fortunate to do, things that we will be fortunate to do, and things that are broader in the world. What's the most exciting or adventurous thing that you've ever done?
The most exciting or adventurous thing I've ever done. The first thing that comes to mind is riding on the very bow of a jet boat. Like, as the nose was up in the air, we were we were going pretty fast down the lake. It was a really like smooth, like the water was like glass. And I was sitting at the very bow of the boat, like just holding on with my legs. Like I had my arms up like it was a roller coaster. But yeah, that was pretty daring. That was pretty adventurous.
That is pretty exciting. And I think every time I see you lost in joy, you have your arms up. So that says that you were in it.
And my mouth wide open in a big old grin. Yeah.
That is so true.
Yeah.
That is iconic Tress for sure. What is something that you wish you were good at but aren't yet?
Other languages. I speak a little bit of Spanish. I understand a teeny tiny bit of Italian. I can count to 10 in Japanese. It's one of those. I took a year of Spanish, and so I have sort of the basics, and they've sort of stuck with me. And I know that French and Italian are similar languages, so I can kind of pick up some of the things that people are saying and get the gist of it. But that's something that's on my list for sure.
That's cool. That's so much better than me. I've studied several languages and struggle to retain any of them. Some might say I still need to work on English a bit first, but I'll get back to the others later. What is the best meal or food experience that you've ever had?
The best meal I ever ate in my entire life, I was about 14 years old, and I was at this great little roadside cafe called Cafe Diablo somewhere in Utah. I can't even tell you what city we were near. And I had a half a chicken and fried plantain, and I would go back to Utah just for that meal.
Just drive randomly around Utah trying to find it. It's worth it. I found
Cafe Diablo. It was so good. The whole trip was a great experience, and that was one of the things that here I am almost 20 years later. It just sticks with me.
That is wonderful. I have a dish from my trip to Hawaii that does the same for me, a corral curry that I dream of. Where is your dream travel destination? Where's somewhere that you haven't been yet that you're saying, I want to go there?
Next up for me is New Zealand. We are talking about doing a month because we would like to do both the North Island and the South Island. And we like to do slow travel. So when we went to Italy, we were there for a week and we only went to Venice. So yeah, we need at least a month to be able to do New Zealand and do it right.
Amazing. And now with your new endeavor, you can do that wherever you are. So you could even do that as you went.
Exactly.
I discovered that feeling while in Asia this year, and it was pretty freeing for sure.
Yeah.
As you look more broadly at the world, what do you hope or believe will be the most exciting invention of the next 30 years?
I think that's a really interesting question because I have no idea. I really hope that it's something medical. I hope that it's something that helps us eliminate or reduce cancer, would be really near and dear to my heart. Or something that genuinely helps heal people as opposed to sort of just the idea of treating symptoms and not causes. But yeah, I would hope that it would be something in the cancer field, just for my own personal reasons.
It's a great wish, and I know that millions of people connect with that desire as well. I'm so glad to have had you here for our time together. Is there a thought or message that you'd like to leave with our audience as we wrap up?
Dan, this has been so much fun. I have enjoyed this immensely, and I think that the two thoughts that go in tandem for me are that the simple things are rarely easy, but they're usually worth it. And know thyself.
Somehow I knew we'd hear know thyself again, right?
Well, it's a reminder I try and embody daily. I have it tattooed on myself so that I can see it daily. And I know the days where I'm not embodying it. Yeah.
It's a wonderful message and a crucial one for all of us. So how can our audience find you, connect with you? What are you working on that you want to share with the world? Let us know where you're at so they can say, we love Tress too, and come and connect.
Yeah, so a couple of things that I'm working on. I mentioned that I've got a presentation later on this month with the Brighton Chamber of Commerce. It's a women's lunch and learn event. I am interested in doing more events like that. I suspect that 2020 will be filled with even more of them. I'm looking to get into some of the local colleges and do 60 to 90-minute presentations there. That would be very exciting for me. So working towards that for 2020. You can always find me on my website, tresshotzel.com, TRESSHOTZEL.com. There's a way to actually schedule an appointment with me right through there, or connect with me via email right through the website. You can also find me on LinkedIn, search for Tress Hotzel. You can find me on Instagram, but I'm not overly active on that. So you can sort of check out who I am and what I'm about, but know that I'm not always active on there. I'm definitely much more active on LinkedIn.
Fantastic. Lots of places to find you, exciting events upcoming, and who knows, maybe she'll be speaking in a town near you next year. Looking forward to that. Thanks so much for being with me, Tress.
Thank you so much, Dan. This has been great.
Thank you for joining us on the Dreams Are Real podcast. If anything we've said has inspired you to dream bigger, live more boldly, or move closer to your ideal life, please reach out and let us know. And also be sure to share this episode with a friend. We would be honored if you would like, subscribe, or leave a review for our show on your favorite podcasting platform. And for more discussion of this episode and all things related to the Dreams Are Real podcast, and to receive your free download of Dan's Defining Your North Star training, please join our Dreams Are Real community on Facebook. Until next time, be amazing and keep crushing it.